The Arabian Sea is no longer just a body of water. It has become the staging ground for one of the most significant American military deployments in decades. As diplomatic tensions between Washington and Tehran reach a boiling point, the United States military is quietly, but unmistakably, moving its pieces into position. This weekend, 3,500 sailors and Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit arrived in the Arabian Sea aboard two naval vessels, the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault ship, and the USS New Orleans, an amphibious transport dock. These are not routine training exercises. These ships carry the kind of firepower and manpower designed for one purpose: rapid, large-scale military operations. And yet, as of now, neither vessel has crossed through the Strait of Hormuz. They are watching. They are waiting. Simultaneously, 1,500 paratroopers from the elite 82nd Airborne Division began arriving in the Middle East. The 82nd Airborne is America's rapid response force, the unit you call when you need boots on the ground fast. Military experts, however, are cautioning that this number, while significant, is not sufficient for a sustained, long-term ground invasion of Iran. The force is large enough to project power, but not yet large enough to hold territory indefinitely. So what exactly is the plan? According to military analysts briefed on the situation, the Pentagon is said to be planning for weeks of ground operations, not days. The operation, officially named Operation Epic Fury, was given a 4 to 6 week estimated timeline by Pentagon officials. As of the latest reporting, the operation is now on day 30, meaning the most critical window is rapidly approaching. The objectives of Operation Epic Fury, as outlined by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, are ambitious and specific: destroy the Iranian Navy, eliminate Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, dismantle missile and drone production infrastructure, significantly weaken Iranian proxy forces throughout the region, and, perhaps most critically, permanently prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But the situation on the ground is already producing consequences. On Friday, Iran launched a major retaliatory strike against the U.S. Prince Sultan Air Base located deep inside Saudi Arabia, hitting it with ballistic missiles and drones. At least 12 U.S. service members were injured. An American Air Force E-3 Sentry AWACS command and control aircraft, a sophisticated airborne radar and communications platform valued at approximately $500 million, was destroyed in the strike. The loss of that single aircraft is not just financial. AWACS planes are the eyes and ears of the battlefield. Losing one changes the information landscape of the entire operation. What makes the Prince Sultan's strike even more alarming is where the intelligence may have come from. Ukrainian President Zelensky has stated that Russian forces took satellite photographs of the base just 2 days before the strike, and that those images may have been shared with Iran. If confirmed, it would mean this conflict is no longer just a U.S.-Iran confrontation. It is a proxy intelligence war with Russia operating in the shadows. And the threats from Iran are not limited to military bases. Just northwest of Dubai, a UK-flagged oil tanker was struck by a projectile and set ablaze. The Maritime Trade Operations Organization associated with the Royal Navy confirmed the strike. Oil tankers burning in the Gulf. It is a chilling image, and a deliberate one. Iran knows that the world's energy supply passes through these waters, and threatening that supply is one of its most powerful tools. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which roughly 20% of the world's oil flows, remains a potential flashpoint. One scenario on the table involves Iran laying naval mines in the strait to cut off global oil shipments. The U.S. military has already begun contingency planning to demine the strait if that happens. The island of Kish, a critical Iranian fuel hub, has also been identified as a potential target or seizure objective, though American bombs recently cratered its landing strip, complicating any airborne operation there. The pieces are on the board, the clock is ticking, and the next move could change everything. While American warships hold their position in the Arabian Sea, and paratroopers land in undisclosed Middle Eastern locations, a parallel war is being fought. One of words, ultimatums, and backroom negotiations. The question the world is asking is simple. Will this end at the negotiating table or on the battlefield? President Trump has made his position unmistakably clear. In a striking public statement, he threatened to obliterate Iran's power plants, oil wells, the island of Kish, and even potentially the country's desalination plants, the very infrastructure that provides clean drinking water to millions of Iranian civilians, if Tehran does not agree to a peace deal, and soon. The message from Washington is blunt: make a deal or face total economic and infrastructural devastation. Iran's public response has been equally defiant. Iranian officials have described American demands as excessive, unrealistic, and irrational. On social media platform X, Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bakir Kalibaf accused President Trump of fabricating the existence of negotiations entirely, calling it a deliberate attempt to manipulate financial markets. His post read as a direct challenge to Washington's narrative, suggesting that whatever conversations may be happening behind the scenes, Iran's public-facing leadership refuses to acknowledge them. And yet, the White House insists talks are happening and progressing. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated plainly, "Despite all of the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well." Secretary of State Marco Rubio added a revealing nuance to this. He acknowledged that Iran's tone in private communications is different from its public statements, but raised a fundamental question about who actually holds the power in Tehran right now. After weeks of American strikes eliminating layers of Iranian leadership, it remains genuinely unclear which Iranian officials have the authority to make binding commitments. "We have to see if these people end up being the ones in charge," Rubio said, "and if they're the ones that have the power to deliver." President Trump himself offered perhaps the most candid summary of the situation in a characteristically blunt statement. "We're doing extremely well in that negotiation, but you never know with Iran, because we negotiate with them and then we always have to blow them up." He added that he believes a deal is probable but stopped short of certainty. One data point cited by the Trump administration as evidence of diplomatic progress: Iran recently allowed 20 additional oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Trump described this as a sign that discussions are moving in the right direction. However, critics were quick to push back on this framing. Those 20 tankers, they pointed out, were Pakistani, not American, and their passage was the result of direct negotiations between Pakistan and Iran, not the United States. Far from being an American diplomatic win, some analysts argue it actually demonstrates that Iran is finding ways to conduct business while deliberately excluding Washington from the conversation. The financial dimension of the conflict adds another layer of complexity. Iran, despite being under bombardment, is generating oil revenue at levels that some analysts describe as historically high, in part because non-Western nations continue purchasing Iranian crude regardless of the conflict. This financial resilience gives Tehran more endurance than a purely military assessment might suggest. Trump has also hinted at calling on Middle Eastern nations to help fund the American military operation, a concept reminiscent of burden-sharing discussions from previous Gulf conflicts. Press Secretary Leavitt, when asked about this, declined to provide specifics, saying only that it was something the president was actively interested in exploring. At the center of the diplomatic puzzle lies a deeply uncomfortable truth. The traditional Iranian power structure that American policymakers have negotiated with for decades has been dramatically altered by the strikes of Operation Epic Fury. Multiple layers of Iranian leadership, according to Trump himself, have been decimated. The new figures now engaging with American diplomats are, by the president's own description, people that nobody's dealt with before. Negotiating with an unfamiliar regime under military pressure against a ticking clock, this is the diplomatic tightrope the Trump administration is walking right now. Strip away the political arguments, the competing narratives, and the televised debates. And at the core of Operation Epic Fury lies one singular objective that has come to define this entire conflict: a stockpile of highly enriched uranium buried deep inside tunnels beneath the city of Isfahan, Iran. Nearly 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium, enough, in the wrong hands, to potentially construct multiple nuclear devices. This is the strategic prize, and it is the reason why, despite all the damage already inflicted on Iran's military infrastructure, American commanders and intelligence analysts continue to say the most dangerous phase of this operation still lies ahead. Seizing that uranium would require something that has never been attempted in an active combat zone at this scale. U.S. forces would need to fight their way to the Isfahan tunnel complex, neutralize resistance, bring in specialized engineering teams with excavation equipment, locate and safely extract the nuclear material, seal it in secure transport containers, move it overland to an airstrip, and fly it out of Iranian territory, all while under potential fire from Iranian forces, drones, and missiles. Military drone warfare expert Brett Velikovich, a former Army Special Operations intelligence analyst, put it plainly: the troop movements happening right now are not necessarily the opening move of a full ground war. They are, in his assessment, strategic pressure, a demonstration of capability, not an announcement of invasion. In modern warfare, he noted, options equal leverage. By positioning 3,500 Marines in the Gulf, the United States is telling Iran, "We can do this. The question is whether you want us to." The other major ground operation being considered is the seizure of Kish Island, Iran's critical fuel hub in the Persian Gulf. Controlling Kish would dramatically alter the strategic balance. As one analyst described it, taking Kish removes Iran's queen from the chessboard. It would give the United States a dominant negotiating position and cut off a vital Iranian logistical and economic artery. However, American airstrikes have already cratered the island's landing strip, which means any operation to seize and hold it would need to overcome significant logistical obstacles from the moment boots hit the ground. There is also the Strait of Hormuz itself. Should Iran begin laying naval mines in the strait, a step that would threaten to shut down global oil shipments, the U.S. military has plans ready to conduct demining operations. The coastline surrounding the strait has been identified as territory that American forces may need to seize and hold in order to keep the waterway open. These are not theoretical scenarios. These are the options being actively war-gamed at the Pentagon right now. The broader battlefield picture, however, contains some genuinely concerning data points that complicate the optimistic official narrative. According to a Wall Street Journal report, Iran has actually increased its daily missile launches, firing at roughly twice the rate compared to just 1 week earlier. This raises serious questions about Iran's ability to rearm and sustain its offensive capabilities despite weeks of American strikes on its weapons infrastructure. Iran is also reported to still possess thousands of drones and hundreds of missiles, and while American air defenses have maintained roughly 90% effectiveness, the sheer volume of incoming fire means some projectiles continue to get through. On the home front, the conflict is generating new threats. French authorities disrupted a terror plot over the weekend with direct links to the Iran conflict. And Iran has reportedly begun threatening American students studying in Middle Eastern countries, a troubling escalation designed to make ordinary Americans feel personally vulnerable. The political debate inside the United States remains fierce, with Democrats characterizing the operation as a historic blunder and Republicans defending it as a necessary and strategically sound campaign. But beyond the partisan noise, the military and strategic reality is this. The next 2 weeks will likely represent the most dangerous and potentially decisive phase of Operation Epic Fury. The uranium is still underground. The Marines are still at sea. The negotiations are still unresolved. And the world is watching to see whether the next chapter of this story is written by diplomats or by soldiers.